at 5:31. First thing we must do is review the minutes from August 9th. Which are part of your packet? Actually, there's two sets of minutes that are part of your packet. Let's do one at a time.
I will say the August 9th minutes aren't nearly as nice as the usual minutes we get when Denise is here with us. So my apologies.
Yeah, they were more abbreviated.
Oh, we still didn't get Jordan Rosenall's name spelled right.
I fixed it, you just didn't get copies of it.
Oh,
So it's fixed on my end.
It's Jordyn, right?
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
have to print another one actually.
okay.
I'll move the minutes accepted as distributed for August 9, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion? Are we all in favor? Minutes are approved. The other set of minutes is from a June 2017 meeting. They're quite long. I've read them.
Wow.
They're
That
pretty
threw me for a
accurate.
loop there. At first, I'm like, I don't remember
They're
this.
pretty accurate to the best of my recollection.
Trying to challenge our memories here?
Yeah,
Was this an oversight?
So this is housekeeping, yes.
Is this,
it's
so,
just something that forgot
Just
to
didn't
get that.
that
so the
completed.
secretary at the time failed to perform his duties?
Hush.
Was not this guy.
It's like a 2.5 hour meeting.
No comment.
Yeah,
We.
we,
Hey,
Hello there, Mr. Marker.
I will trust your memory, and I will also move that these minutes
Second that as well.
of June 8, 2017 be approved as distributed.
Okay, all in favor?
Did we get a
There's
second?
4 of us in favor. I heard
I
a second.
seconded it.
Okay.
I know Tom wanted to abstain from that because he wasn't here then. All right, let me sign these while I remember.
Oh, you're better late than never, huh?
Hey, Denise is right on top of it. All right. Minutes are dispensed with. The next item is new business. Building and demolition permits for Caribou Senior Living. That's what this must be.
Yes. Now keep in mind, these are still preliminary. I do have a preliminary set of drawings available too, if you wish to view them at some time. Basically, the permit is for the Caribou Senior Living LLC development that will be at the old Hilltop School. Basically, they're developing, I believe, 38 units. I believe they're all one-bedroom units of various sizes, 4 different packages, basically.
They're going to keep the basic structure, though, or are they going to tear the school
The
down?
basic shape of the school will stay the same. However, there'll be some facade improvements.
Is it on us to schedule a hearing at this time, or is this just informative?
They would actually like to be proactive and schedule that public hearing as soon as possible. They have not taken ownership of this property yet, but that is pending a decision by the state of Maine to accept their credit enhancement agreement. Is that correct? Which is, they said would take a week or so. They were thinking maybe a month, and so we're being proactive, and we're going to do everything we can not to hold them up on their project.
I will make a motion that we schedule a public hearing for this project at our next scheduled monthly meeting.
I'll second that.
Well, you'll get to run that hearing then.
Oh, gosh, I'm gonna have to review the tapes on how to do that.
It's been moved and seconded to schedule a hearing for next month meeting. All in favor? That carries.
Very good. We'll get the word out to
We'll take
the,
care of that.
we'll get out the word to the abutting landowners in the area within 500 feet, I believe. But while we're thinking about that, we should also think about the zoning issues in the same area of town.
Yes.
In order really for them to pull a permit, we'll have to consider the zoning being changed.
Haven't we already done that?
We talked
We've
about it.
discussed it at length.
We've never
I
acted
think
on it.
For both B and C, where for the sake of the watching public, item B is Hilltop School, Begonias Reynolds, and item C is 105 Washburn Street, which is currently R2. Excuse me, C2, should be R2.
Is that on the corner of Dahlgren?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a convenience
It's old
store.
Maddie's
Years
Market
ago,
or-
it was a mom
Yeah,
and
it
pop
was a
store.
convenience store, and when I first moved in there was an attempt to have a bottle redemption store
Yep.
that lasted about 3 weeks. And it's been an apartment ever since. We've discussed both of those items at length.
Where was the Gonyers rental properties one at? It doesn't specify.
That's in the area up near Hilltop that was a retired subdivision at one time. And when we retired the subdivision, Gonyer Properties acquired the property. And so it's,
Where's it at in relation to Hilltop though?
you've got the map in front of you. It's between, was it Vesta and Marshall?
Is that that chunk of land that, trying to think of the street. Well, Wellington would have continued through?
Correct.
Okay. So it's to the right of like the ball fields. If I was heading towards Paris Snow.
That's
Okay.
correct.
That one right there, where the big one labeled
Yep.
R1 is the school, I believe.
Gotcha.
And then the little,
Yeah.
Little thing
Yeah,
up here
I
is
knew what
that-
the little one was. I just wasn't familiar with the other one.
Didn't we discuss just continuing R3 right through?
We discussed, I believe, bringing the R3 into that area.
Into that area.
Because it's an abutting,
Yes.
It would be more correctly R2. I
or
believe.
yeah, R2, excuse me.
So a couple ways to look at it would be R2 would come out across the R3 in that undeveloped area behind the Hilltop School and wrap around to catch those two areas. Or we could actually continue it across all of that R1 district and make that a multifamily
I thought that's what we had discussed, is that we were gonna bring the R2 across,
all the way.
following the property line, and leave that R3 as it was in case there was some development later that the person who currently owns it wanted to do.
Very good.
The person that owns the R3 also owns a good chunk of the R2 zone.
Right.
So that one parcel has two zones.
yeah, there's no boundary line between the R2 and the R3 over to the west. The westward side of that. So what's the will of the board?
I personally am a bit frustrated that we've rehashed this at least twice before, and we leave a meeting thinking that we're all set, and then we come back and it seems to just evaporate into outer space, and we come back a month or two later and we're back at square one.
Well,
It's like nothing ever gets
here's my
completed.
Here's my understanding of that, Phil. The last time we talked about this, I don't know about the whole board, but I was under the impression that we were just gonna make it part of the overall package that we fed the city council when we wrapped up chapter 13. However, it's now incumbent on us to think about it in advance of that, because the Hilltop folks wanna get going.
Well, and I thought I had mentioned that we were gonna have something prior to that in lieu of this possibly taking place.
Yeah, well, if it had been kept on the agenda,
Right?
it would have. And as far as our work with Chapter 13, that's been going on since before Tony Mizuko. And it's like, you know, because there's so much time that passes, we've redone things several times. And it's really frustrating that for some reason what we think is being wrapped up doesn't get wrapped up. So as far as what we need to do, I think we need to take action on this because there's construction scheduled for it. And I think that everything that's been discussed with Chapter 13 should be interesting to see a summary of everything that we've said and done as far as Chapter 13 and vote on it and send it to the city council. Because our holding on until Chapter 13 is complete, we could be another 5 years. And half of us will be gone.
Right, I'm still a short timer here, but I do believe we're almost done with our land use and definitions, and so, there was, actually Denise mentioned something earlier that we thought we'd have to look at.
The processes.
Okay, we would like to, from the municipality standpoint, streamline the process for a lot of this work. So, we've had permits come in and take as much as 90 days to get processed. We would really like to be able to turn people around much quicker than that.
I think I've shared with this group that I was told by the owner of a certain hardware store in town who has expanded to 3 or 4 other communities, that this community is the most difficult for him to get anything done in, that other communities have been to basically assigned a person to represent him and fast track him right through the system, and it's roll out the red carpet, yes, come on in, and bang, 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 and it's all done. And this community,
Time out, okay?
okay,
Let's focus on the rezoning issue that we have to address, rather than dashing off in 5 different directions.
The landowner that has that piece of property that's split between R3 and R2, has he expressed any frustration of having a property?
He has not, but I'm under the impression that there will be development plans in the future, and they will be residential in nature.
Will R2 fit his requirement?
It will, but I don't think we should limit, I don't think we should pull R2 all the way through to that lot line. I think we need to pull the R2 to abut
The other R3, right?
the other R3.
On the other side of Rush Street?
Have it come across Paris Snow at the intersection of Marshall, affect those 4 lots that run up Paris Snow, affect where Hilltop is now, and have it come across the street to the school between Peterson and Newton. At this time, if we need to change something down the road, we can do that, but I think for the sake of time, we pull that R2 across, it's gonna work in that particular area, and we can worry about that R3 if that comes to fruition, that something else needs to be done with that.
So, what you're saying is take this section right here, make it R2, and make this R2 and run the R2 over across the street?
Correct.
And did you indicate from Peterson south to Newton?
Just the highlighted area,
Just the highlighted
just the
area?
highlighted area.
But additionally highlight this stuff
Correct.
up here? All right.
Yep.
I guess my concern with this, and to echo what Phil was saying, is that if we have this discussion, we change this now, but then something else comes up. How can we make this decision tonight work for who knows what's going to come? I mean, we've got some spot zoning up in the northwest corner of this map where how can we make this so we can move to being more efficient with getting businesses in? Now, I was thinking about that on the ride over. What is, our vision? If we want to bring businesses in and make it easier and have a 30-day turnaround instead of a 90, how can we make that easier? So, and I know we can't do it all tonight, but if we're thinking ahead with still keeping in compliance with the things we want, what are these best decisions to make it happen?
Well,
So I think that's got to be in our mind.
Yeah, I think that's a topic that we can discuss a little bit later, but because you don't want to fast track and guarantee 30-day turnaround times for everything.
Correct.
Major.
And I get.
I mean, there's going to be those items that are still going to have to come before the board, but I think we need to discuss that part when we get back down into chapter 13. I think we should focus on the stuff that's before us right now with these 3 particular things and take care of those, and then address these other concerns a couple slots down there with regards to the agenda.
What's the harm in running that R2 all the way past Rush Street? Is there a reason why that can't be done, or are there different concerns that would bring into play? And just get rid of that R1 zone completely?
Well, most of the lots in that R1 area are R1 sized.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we need to keep the
And
continuity
we
of
get the
it.
R1 setback requirements and so forth.
The R1 setbacks and R2 are pretty much identical,
Okay.
but on the other side of Rush Street, at the far end of that zone, there actually are multifamily dwellings.
In the R3 zone or in
In
the
the
R1?
R2.
It would be in the R,
No, there's no
The old
buildings in
one,
the
yeah.
R3 right now.
Because Rush Street is.
Yeah, Rush Street's not even on the map, so.
yeah.
I'm looking at both, the big one and the little one here. I mean, Rush Street is still zoned, R1.
Correct.
I mean, I think you get in
Comes
a
out from
couple
the-
lots
comes up this
in
way.
the mixed use zone, and then it turns into R1.
I think for all, like I said, for all intents and purposes, we worry about the matter at hand now, and then, I mean, we haven't necessarily finalized our rezoning map anyway, and that's something for us to address at that point, but I think in order
To get the Hilltop project off the
right,
ground, we gotta do
I
that.
think we need to,
And just while we're at it, fix Dahlgren and Washburn too.
Yeah.
right, yeah, just those three properties here that we have. Because you can make that one on the corner of Dahlgren and Washburn into an R2, because it's abutting an R2, so,
Mhm. Well, R2 is across the street.
right.
But that's all right.
Because in essence, that's what we're doing with that parcel between Peterson and Newton as well. And we'll need to have a public hearing for that anyway,
We'll
correct?
need a public hearing, that's what we're here for tonight.
Do we need it for the Hilltop project?
To be rezoned, we'll have to notify the people that are affected, and there'll be a public hearing about
Oh,
rezoning.
Okay, it comes all three here.
Okay, well then, guys, we're gonna have to have a public hearing on all this. We better schedule that too.
Might as well do it, I mean,
So you don't want a motion, you don't want a motion to,
I was hoping we'd get a
Changing.
motion to write a letter, but I guess we
no,
can't do
we need
that.
to have a public hearing. So, I'll make a motion that we have a public hearing with regards to the rezoning of the marked areas on our map, the corner of Dahlgren and Washburn, and then the area that's Hilltop School, and the area across the street from Hilltop School between Newton and Peterson Ave, for our next meeting, October 11th.
should your motion mention what you're gonna zone from and to?
Being changed from an R1 to an R2, and incorporating the properties that would be abutting on Paris Snow Drive to the current R2, to where it would end on the opposite side of the Hilltop School, the current Hilltop School, and that parcel in between Peterson and Newton Ave.
So, thought I saw your drawing on your map, what do you think that's going to affect
Right
the
here.
notices that we send out?
Yep.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah,
So-
I'll make them,
well,
yeah,
See if
it would
this
be from
fits-
the upper end of Paris
see if
Snow
that
Drive
fits the
where,
bill.
yeah, basically. Right there.
okay.
Here, Bob, this is what I'm writing on.
And if you agree with it, just give it to Ken.
Yeah.
What's the date? Just
Second.
For my own?
Second Phil's motion.
Okay, thank you.
Moved by Phil, seconded by
And
Tom.
as soon as
We're moving all kinds of filth here.
Tom's happy, we'll take a look. All in favor? We have added to your workload for next time. What date is that in October? I don't
October
have a
11th.
calendar thing. Anybody know?
Somebody said the 11th.
October 11th.
Yep.
October 11th, okay.
Have you been to?
Okay, that closes out all three items under new business. New communications.
Very good.
Hey guys,
We heard this month from the people at the floodplain management,
we're moving on.
the state of Maine, and I was actually interviewed by Janet Parker from that agency this afternoon for about an hour, to be informed of various aspects of floodplain management. So this is something that's adopted, not the same as our shoreland zoning, but kind of on the side. They're separate. In that the shoreland zoning is more regulated by distances from certain bodies of water, and so floodplain is regulated by just that. How far is that water going to rise when we're in a flood stage? So typically, these ordinances, there's not a lot that we can adjust for our use. Most generally, these are adopted as presented by the floodplain people. They did include an attachment regarding fees, so they will allow us to add an extra fee to whatever permit that we need to assign within the floodplain because it warrants additional inspections.
Okay, what's the mechanism here? If,
It's required by the state of Maine.
right, so does it go straight to city council because it's required by the state of Maine?
If
Or
that-
does the planning board have to
If
have
that's
another hearing?
if that's your recommendation, I don't believe we need a public hearing for this one.
Okay,
If you're amending the code.
Oh, we are amending the code because this is an update. We're gonna have a whole bunch of public hearings coming up. I did not understand that, my
well,
apologies.
let's do, this is not an emergency, let's do this in November.
Wow, why kick the can down the road?
Well, if you wanna do it all next month,
We might as well.
okay?
We're talking about doing things, getting things done and out of the way. What's a better way to do it?
My recollection of how many people come to these hearings, you're probably right.
I think we should have a public hearing with regards to that at the next meeting.
Well, I make a motion that we have a public hearing regarding the floodplain ordinance and its update for
October 11th.
2018, 5:30.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Carries. Okay, staff report.
Very good. It's been kind of a wild month and it's been odd things. It's been things like lot line disputes, which we really can't help with, but they uncovered various other issues that we could say. There's setback issues, for instance. I've had a couple buildings that are either on someone else's land or are with not the proper setback. So we've sent out notices of violations for that. We sent out notices of violations for basically dilapidated houses and things like that. We've done probably, we did 5 yesterday.
I think so.
Yeah, so we've been staying busy trying to clean it
Did
up.
that one over behind the wellness center get taken down?
Not yet.
My goodness.
What happened there, and so I can move right on to that, is we're still working on the Bird's Eye plant demolition. We got held up because we found that there was still some asbestos and we had to have some additional analysis done. We found that we got another area of asbestos we need to take care of. In the meantime, we found our lagoon of highly concentrated effluent. I spoke about it the last time we met. Since then, we've vacuumed up as much as they can get through that system from Allen's Environmental. They could actually vacuum up the whole thing with a different system, but at that point you're blowing really smelly air into the atmosphere. DEP is not in favor of that. So now we're looking at making a giant ash cake out of the whole thing. And I say all that to say that since we held up our contractor, we got kind of shuffled to the bottom of his deck. Summer short, he had to go other places. I'm fighting to get him back on our site. And at that time, we'll establish an area that we can drop about 250 yards of ash from Re-Energy in Ashland, which will mix together with the effluent and try to cake up the whole mess into a solid waste mass that we can then just dispose of at the landfill. So ongoing work with our streetlight project, that just came back to light yesterday or the day before. We'll be in a conference call with their representatives, and we're getting to the point where we can actually assign a cost to this project, so it's pretty interesting.
Maybe just so the planning board's aware, what the preliminary numbers that came back with was that it would cost us roughly $360,000 to buy all the streetlights and all the equipment to change them out to LEDs. But the cost savings from going to LED, we could actually pay back that cost in 3.1 years.
2.1?
3.1.
That's still for.
Is that
pretty darn good.
Is that reestablishing all the lights that were taken, or the bulbs were taken out of it as well?
That's one of the things we're still looking at. We've identified all the existing street lights on or off
Okay.
to be looked at.
And in the meantime, just to make things more interesting, is Emira is actually coming out with a program, so they could actually deal with LED streetlight replacements. So they weren't really a player before, but now they're
Well,
offering
they
that
suddenly
price.
discovered they
prices
don't want
as
to lose a revenue stream.
So again, it's very interesting.
What equipment is involved in, when you say equipment, like trucks to lift it up, or what equipment are you talking about?
The-
Separate from the LEDs equipment, or?
Primarily the new heads and the new mast arms if we need them.
Okay. So this isn't something that, the town can't get a bucket truck and go up there and we just can't change it out. We gotta change the entire system.
Or you could do them one at a time if you
It's a
wanted.
one at a time thing.
Yeah, I know, but no, I mean, when I say entire system, I mean the entire light head and everything else needs to be changed out.
Right.
Okay.
But part of the cost estimates in this is the long-term maintenance, because if we buy the streetlights, the maintenance then becomes our responsibility. Merrill is proposing to get into that game as well, that they'll provide us maintenance services for a fee. Or the city can, as you say, buy a bucket truck and take care of it long-term. We need to look at those options still. But the contract with Realterm is such that if we move forward with it and change out the lights, they will provide maintenance during the life of carrying the loan, so to speak, until we get those other things figured out.
Any other questions for Mr. Marker or Dennis? All right then. We find ourselves at item 7, planning board training, and Mr. Marker, you have the floor.
I was, I guess, invited to come or encouraged to come to talk about ag zone stuff.
Yeah, some of us want to know why we need one.
If you don't think you need one, you don't need one.
Well, we don't know what to think, okay?
Did you ever figure out what Presque Isle does or what other communities?
The interesting thing is Presque Isle's rural residential area is their AG zone. So they treated the whole thing all at once.
I believe we had one too at one time. And given the, I guess, decrease of the amount of farmers, I believe that went away. I think it used to be an R4, if I remember correctly.
It was either R4 or RF.
Yeah.
But, it's a good question. If the needs of the community are such that the current zoning is serving the purposes for which they're intended, then you don't need to create a new zone. It's, and unless you were to have a large meeting of all the farmers and they raise complaints about the current zoning not meeting their needs and something else is necessary, then you could leave the zoning in place. I raised it as an idea. We've used it in the past in other communities I've seen, but that was because those farmers saw weaknesses in the current zoning that needed to be addressed, and so we did that.
What could potentially be a current weakness in our R3 that you can see to the farmers of this community?
I think one of the things that I can see is right now your R3 opens the door to a lot of different development, which could come in adjacent to farming operations. and you could, in a sense, begin to piecemeal farming operations or create impacts or perceived impacts around the farming operations, which then raises issues with neighbor hate, or, you know, why is the farmer working at all hours of the night? Why is the farmer spraying, or whatever, you know? But it's probably a minor issue right now in the market that we have.
I,
That's
farmers spray all hours of the night because I've done it before.
right.
It's a daunting task, but you just do it. And for 6 months out of the year, you just do it. Let's
Right.
say a cattle farm comes in. There's preventative measures that you use to mitigate any sort of contamination to the field that's next to it. So, I think to me, it's working great now, and it allows the farmer to say, geez, you know, I'd like to put in, because organic farming is becoming one of those things that is more prolific in this country.
Mhm.
So now what they use is they use chicken pellets. It's chicken manure, basically.
Right.
And well, what if a farmer up here would like to put in a plant like that to service organic farmers in the country? Because right now you can get it in Canada, and I think that's the closest spot. So they're importing it. Well, why wouldn't you want it in the United States to begin with? And if some organization wanted to do that, I don't want to limit them by saying, well, you can't do this because it's zoned ag and that's all it's for, you know. And with the R3, I think it also allows the farmers to be able to say, well, geez, farming didn't work out, get tired of it, and I'd like to start this venture. That R3 zone still allows them to be able to start any business they would like, and gives them an open sense of opportunity
Right.
to start anything.
Yep.
I mean, if it's broke, don't fix it. That's the old Rooster County saying. you know.
I concur 100%,
As do I.
and I think that the creation of yet another, I mean, we've talked about mixed-use zones. We've talked about, you know, changing industrial 1 and 2 to just plain industrial. We've talked about manipulating our existing zones. I think adding yet another ag zone is just more complication. It's to fix a problem that doesn't exist. And if it could be perceived as limiting any new economic activity, we certainly don't want it. We want to remain as open and flexible as possible.
And it's something that we can always add down the road.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see any market pressure right now that's makes us want to protect farmland any more than it's already protected.
Yeah, because, I mean, those farmers aren't giving up those pieces of land. I mean, and everybody swaps with everybody else. I mean, everybody has the people they swap with. They've already got it all on a rotation, and it's a rotation that, unless something catastrophic happens, it's, you know, 10, 15, 20 years out, who the heck knows, you know?
Right.
I mean, so, kind of one of them deals.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if you don't need it, we don't need
No,
it.
fair enough.
And that's, you know, I think that probably a greater concern would be the standards that you have for the current zones that you have. And looking at the land use table, I was telling Denise even today that, you know, right now, something as simple as you're driving along Access Highway and you've got the motor vehicle division and that nice building, and Griffith Ford behind there, that nice building, and the manicured lawns and the things, and even to some degree the roller rink and the business park. And yet now we have storage sheds popped right down in the middle of that, you know, gateway area to the downtown. And there's nothing we can do about that now, because that was an allowed use in that zone, and they're building it. But those are some of the things that need to be looked at more is, okay, what are the areas we really want to highlight with the zoning and the land uses, and are there certain standards that we want to be looking at for any type of new development that comes into those areas? And again, I'm not talking about making gold-plated driveways and other things, you know, that doesn't make any sense. But you know, even with Troy Haney's project, where he was looking at putting in the 8-unit townhome instead of the 2 additional duplexes, and I sat down with him one day, I said, well, can you plant a few extra trees and help dress that site up a little bit and hide some of the massing of that building? And right now there's no landscaping regulations really for the city for new development. But, you know, those are some little things that can help to dress up new things that come in, they're not a huge cost impact. But I think just looking a little bit closer at the current zoning that you have, and that's, I don't want to cause review of Chapter 13 for a whole nother year. It's probably something that is just going to have to come in a little over time, but definitely through the land use chart that is being worked on in the definitions, you can start to do some of that.
I would add, about the AG zone, I would add that many communities in the state of Maine, and actually all over the United States, are concerned about farmland preservation. And that a lot of these communities that are agricultural in nature, but they're also bedroom communities, the more urban areas. So people are buying up these lands, and that way of life, the farming way of life, is leaving the area. And so that's what the concern is for these farmland preservation type.
Well, if we were within 25 or 30 miles of Bangor, I'd say we have to worry about it, but where we are, I don't think we do.
Well, and I think, you know, unless somebody comes in and offers the farmers $10, $15 million for a friggin' piece of land, I mean, they're not gonna get rid of it. You know, I think they're gonna be, you know, unless,
I think,
don't know. I don't think they're gonna get rid of the land.
I think that and I don't mean this derogatory in any way, but I think that the farmers of today are astute business people. Very astute.
They run a business. They don't run a farm, they run a business.
They're different, it's a different ball game than farming of 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And I think that's when a lot of, if there was any encroachment onto farmland, it was 30 or 50 years ago, and you were dealing with a different farmer as opposed to a conglomerate farmer today. I mean, and it's not just farming. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that you either get big or die. And so I think that the farmers of today are smart business people, or they wouldn't still be in business, and they're not about to do things to jeopardize their farming operations.
Yeah, I fully agree. And a lot of farmers are getting into cooperatives or associations, and as you say, sharing land, changing land out, and what goes on there, trying to maximize everybody's profits as much as they can. Yeah,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
okay.
Come more often. Stay late.
Well, I now have an airport advisory committee on the same night as planning board.
Oh dear.
So I won't make that tonight, but, so there's a lot of neat things going on. So,
I mean, we're usually here at the same time every month, so.
So is the airport advisory.
So is the airport advisory committee.
Well, you know.
Yeah, we could invite the whole airport advisory committee to come in and advise us on what's happening with the airport, right?
Actually, that would be a good meeting.
Yeah.
it would be a good meeting. The last time the airport plan was updated, I think, was 2014, so about the same time that the general plan was last done. And there's always a concern, or what do you do with excess airport property? There are some FAA limitations to what we can do, but there's also some opportunities there that we may want to look at with the general plan, and how do we protect the airspace but still facilitate development around there. And so definitely would be a good meeting to have at some point.
And there's a new energy there as well.
Well, no, something you can, if you're looking ahead and you're saying, oh, there's nothing on the meeting.
Bring it
agenda
October
tonight."
11th, right?
No, that's the one you don't want to do. Not the 11th, no, October 11th. Appreciate you spending time on this, Dennis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I might also add, one of the things that would be good to start incorporating some of the planning board's opinions in is the economic development discussions that we were having. I don't believe any of you were there at the meeting that we had over at the recreation center. We had representatives from the Business Investment Group, Caribou Economic Growth Council, the Caribou Downtown group, Glass is Half Full, NMDC was there.
Who sent out the invitations for that? Because I only learned of it reading it in the paper after the fact.
See, I didn't hear about that.
I would have gone to it if I'd have known it.
You of all people would have wanted to be there, yeah.
We,
It's my turn to apologize for that one. That was
well, I'll take this one, Ken. So we were trying to initially, we knew we had all these different groups around the town, that they were all kind of clawing after some part of economic development. And the thought was, let's get them in the same room together so everybody knows who they are and how they can maybe coordinate a little bit. And as we sent the invitations out, other people found out about it and said, hey, well, we want to get there too. Hey, we want to get there too. And we realized this thing could balloon very quickly to become a real major meeting. And so we tried to still keep it as close to the original intent, which was introductory in nature. But there's still going to be other meetings. Some of the suggestions that came out of that meeting were to invite the realtors of the area to come together and have a discussion about what the current market conditions are. I think that would be great information for you to have as a planning board. And there was another meeting suggested of calling all the business owners together, which may include farmers or other people around that we know are operating businesses in one form or another, and say, let us know what are the hurdles to helping you further your business intents and help you be successful. There again, it becomes more a regulatory thing, like Ken mentioned. How can we process things faster? How can we help new development get through faster? I know when I first got here, we started having some of those same discussions, and I got caught up in city manager roles and haven't had a lot of time to spend with that. But definitely, there's some things that we want to begin approaching again, and definitely need to have your input in and moving forward.
And for more, we had a nice article that was published in the Rooster Republican. It's at the top half of the page in the business section. Nice article they did for us. We're looking forward to a survey of our business community. I don't think that's been done since the days of the Caribou Development Corp. And then try to capture some momentum and move forward with, again, capture some of this energy that seems to be there. So.
I just had a quick question on the Bird's Eye Avenue. Are we going to be able to reuse a lot of what's going on there, like the I-beams used for Parks and Rec and to build bridges, stuff like that? What are we going to save?
I have a funny feeling that the contractor gets to say what happens to that.
Actually, the contractor is supposed to pull all of it down, and basically we would be able to salvage the metal how we deem fit.
Okay.
So I know that Recreation's talked about trying to utilize some of that material for their structures. We'll just have to look at it as it comes down and see what's going to fit for our needs.
Town garage have any use for that, or something?
I don't know if Dave's looked at it very much. A lot of it is just going to be scrap when it comes down, but those I-beams are certainly very valuable.
I was surprised that when Ken and I walked through there how well they'd hold up. It looks like they were painted last week. And that's
Some
what's
of them.
been said. Some of them do,
Some-
you know.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking if much that we can save and scrap the rest. and
Well, if we
price
can
them out,
identify
so-
a use, but if
Yeah.
they're just gonna go off in some back lot and lose their paint and get rusty, I'm not sure that's a wise use of storage space.
No, we anticipate that a good portion of that is going to go for scrap, and the city will try to recoup some costs out of the whole operation. As far as the land is concerned, because of the $100,000 grant that we received from the NBRC, it had a stipulation on it that the city would have to retain the property for 20 years. So once we get it fairly cleaned up, the question is, what do we do with it for 20 years? There are some very good concrete pads up there. I know Ken and I have talked about one of those would be great to make the ice rink out of in the wintertime.
Mentioned to Tom, we could do hockey, do pond hockey over there. We could do freezer hockey over here.
Very, there's some great things there. Even if we utilize it for our own purposes, there's some great parking area there. We won't have to worry about regrading stuff. So we definitely want to look at over for the next 20 years, what's the plan for that site, The council budgeted $25,000 for a study of that site as far as what we can do with it. Knowing that we have to hold on to it for 20 years, it kind of limits what that study might tell us. But there are some options there we need to start looking at. How can we utilize that over the next 20 years to benefit the community? Yep.
More good information. Okay, now, the last two items are work on 13, chapter 13, and manufactured housing. Is the manufactured housing, trailers and tiny houses, a short item?
Actually, I just wanted to keep that fresh in everyone's mind. I know I mentioned it before, the fact that our ordinance and the state statute do not agree about our application of allowing mobile homes in certain areas of the town, and manufactured homes in general. So we need a little ordinance work there to make them jive. And as well, I mentioned tiny houses before, and at first it was just kind of a side interest, but this application is coming to a town near us real soon. I mean, this is going to happen. It's happening in the southern part of the state already. People are developing ordinances to give them some tools. Okay, someone wants to drop a tiny house. We don't really, with the exception, I think that our minimum size is 700 square feet right now within the ordinance, and tiny houses go down to 200 square feet. We had a gentleman say that he wants to buy an Amish building, set it on the site of his old trailer, and insulate it, and that will become his new house. So it's a manufactured house.
Mm-hmm.
So we better think of having some tools to help us with this. So if a trailer's going to come in and go into a residential area, what are those standards they should meet? Should be on a full foundation, should be on a slab. You know, that kind of thing. Do they need hurricane ties? Do they need... there needs to be some standards that we can apply. I think a lot of the town, especially in the newer developed areas, they probably have covenants, and we'll let them duke that out in court. But for us, we really need to adhere to state statute.
Well, I always worry about how to phrase this question. If we need to adhere to state statute, and if state statute exists on paper, what is the impediment of us simply saying, go incorporate that? I mean, we can't modify it, we gotta comply with state statute, right?
There's a couple ways. One is to go through the process, public hearings, change the ordinance, and adopt that language into our code. The other would be to simply say we're adopting that section of state code as it may be moved from time to time. But if you want to tweak that and add things, that's what you have to do with your own ordinances. You still have to change the ordinance, which means we have to go through the public hearing process and send it on to the city council, and they have to adopt the ordinance.
Well, then what's the recommendation of
Or
staff? Do we-
we could establish a moratorium on that kind of development until we have that discussion. Correct?
Certainly can do that.
Yeah, moratorium aside, I hadn't even thought about that. Do we say, okay, we have to get this done, we're gonna get it done as part of chapter 13 and drop the whole package at one time? Or are we gonna continue to make small tweaks to 13 item for item as these new issues come up?
I think we need to take care of chapter 13 as we've got it right now, and then worry about these smaller issues as they come down the line. I don't think we need to say, okay, well, we got a small issue here, let's go back and look at chapter 13. We need to get chapter 13 done. Tired of kicking that can down the road, we need to get it taken care of, and then anything that we need to add later, we can add later. It's not that we can't do it, but I don't think we should dwell on these things that keep coming down the line
Well, I
Without-
don't think this is a brand new issue. I think there's something that we just didn't know about.
Well, and I'm not saying that it is, but
More issues like this are going to come up.
right.
as we go.
I mean, we're going to have these monthly, all these little changes, all these other little tweaks. We need to get Chapter 13 done. Put that thing to bed. And then
Does
move
it
on.
not, does it not make sense to incorporate the things that we know are happening?
Then we're never going to be done. We're never going to be done.
I don't agree with that.
Well, I mean, we've spent 40, almost an hour with our meeting tonight, and of that, I dare say 2/3 of it has been in relation to Chapter 13 and what we're going to do.
Yeah.
You know,
So I agree, we should get our notes together and move on our amendments to chapter 13. However, this is a living document. It's
That's my-
gonna be ever changing.
When I first started, I remember we're working on chapter 13, but it's a revolving door. It's always going to need to be
Right.
tweaked and changed and
Right.
added to or taken away. So I think we got to remember that too.
Does council recognize that fact? I mean,
I don't think you have to worry about the council coming back and saying, you told us you had this fixed, we're not gonna change anything again. I don't think you're gonna see that. I think
Okay.
they'll just say,
all right.
okay, we recognize, in fact, even in your recommendation letter, back to them, you could say, this has been our attempt to put this together right now, but we recognize there are other things coming, such as, and you can make a list for them, just so they know that there's more to come.
Would you, Phil, I'm in agreement with your sentiment to get it done.
Yeah.
Would you agree to us incorporating this mobile housing thing by reference? So we'll at least get the state statute as it
Yeah, I
stands
mean, we're still going to have to have a
incorporated.
public hearing on it.
Oh,
So,
yeah, we do.
we're 60 days before we can do anything with it. I would like to think in 60 days, we could say to the council, here you go, here's Chapter 13.
We'll have to have a hearing on the whole thing anyway.
I realize that.
Yeah.
But why prolong that? We can have that on the back burner, knowing that, okay, well, we're gonna need to make a change to our mobile home ordinance after we get Chapter 13 done. That's a relatively small change on the scope of what we've done with Chapter 13.
That's why I wanted to get it done now, because it is small.
And on an interesting note, I did some research, and Presque Isle's ordinance isn't written correctly either, so.
What's your recommendation for
Everyone's gonna be thinking about this.
Well, what,
the
hypothetical,
manufactured homes?
what happens when a planning board meets, us, Presque Isle, whoever's, and we go by our current existing chapter whatever, and we already know it's not in compliance? I mean, what's our liability?
But if ours is more stringent, then, I mean,
Don't we open ourselves up to developer lawsuits right off the bat?
It depends on how you apply it. If our laws are stricter, and they're allowed to be stricter, and you apply ours, then you're fine. If the state law is more lenient, and particularly federal law says this is what it's going to be, and yet we've tried to put an extra string or two on it that we shouldn't, then if we try to apply our law, we get in trouble. And that's where you simply fall back on state law and federal law, in this instance trumps ours, no matter what it says.
So right now, we are in a situation where we are more strict than state. Is that not true?
That's correct.
So we can't act on our existing ordinance anyway. If something comes before us, we have to act on it according to state statute, not our statute. So that's why I'm saying, why don't we just get state statute in there and be done?
Is he correct in that a local ordinance cannot exceed the requirements of the state statute?
Again, it depends.
because we ran into this with regards to campground on the Lombard Road. Our statute was more stringent, which made it more difficult for him to do what he wanted to do. At that which point, 6 or 12 months down the road, we had an epiphany. We're like, well, let's just make it meet state statute.
And we still haven't done that.
It depends.
It's in Chapter 13.
It depends on the
the
narrowness.
Right.
If the state law says that mobile or manufactured homes are to be permitted in any single-family zone, that's a very broad thing. And if the city tries to narrow that and say, well, we're gonna say it can only be in a a zone in this location in the city, even though a single family can be done anywhere else in the city. In that sense, the city's tried to narrowly tailor the law, which the state law would then trump ours and say, no, any zone in the city, you have to allow manufactured homes.
Okay, but
If the state law says you have to allow manufactured homes in a residential zone, the city could say, okay, well, we will allow them, but they have to be on a permanent foundation, they have to have a pad, they have to be connected to water and sewer. That is more strict than the state law, but you're not contrary to
Yeah.
the
Right.
state requirements.
See what you're
so,
saying.
so we can be stricter provided we're not violating the state law.
Yes,
That was my understanding, because we are the equivalent of the legislature. We legislate ordinances, which are the equivalent of state statutes. We're just a municipal level legislature. Am I correct?
the city council is the legislature.
Oh, okay, so,
But,
all right.
yes, you'd be like the committees making recommendations to the larger legislature, which adopts the laws, but yes.
are you the governor?
No,
I'm not touching that one.
no, I'm staff.
Maybe like an AG or something like that.
All right, I guess we didn't get very far in that whole discussion.
No,
I
and
think it's
again,
real
I
simple.
didn't think we'd solve it tonight. I wanted people to keep their minds on it. It's something that we need
Well, it's
to.
real simple, especially with this, the manufactured homes, the tiny homes or whatever. We don't want people yarding in a trailer, chalking the wheels and just parking it there. Because A, it's unsafe. B, it doesn't look good. And it's not incumbent of what the council nor us, nor registered voters in this town would like to see in this municipality. You ought to have a slab, and if you live in town, it needs to be connected to water and sewer. I think that's simple, I mean,
The International Building Code really takes care of the rest because it does require
Then-
hurricane ties and things like that.
I'm gonna write it. I mean, we'll have to have a hearing and all that fun hoop-de-doo, but, I don't see why somebody wouldn't wanna put a slab. If you're gonna buy so much, a home and spend all that money, wouldn't you wanna preserve it and protect it? Put a slab on the thing. If they wanna put a foundation, put a foundation. Leave it up to them, either a slab or a foundation. But you just can't pull a home into town, chop the wheels and say, we're good. I don't
Under
think
the
that's,
disguise of a tiny home.
if the guy's got a tiny home, put it on a slab. I mean,
Regarding these tiny homes and zoning and things of that nature, I believe the Caribou Utilities District has hundreds of house lots with water and sewer running by them, which are not built upon. There's a lot of vacant land interspersed, and I don't know if those would be good spots for, in other words, we should allow tiny homes to fill these small areas.
One of the things that the Caribou Economic Growth Council has been looking at is not only the vacant lots in town, but the lots that have homes on them that people have vacated. And we've been coordinating with the utility district on where those properties are. And I wouldn't say there's hundreds, but there's quite a few that, they're paying their minimum utility connection fee, but they're not using anything for sewer or water.
Right.
So some of those properties could be redeveloped.
I actually captured some on that quick map I made. But,
What are those red colored lots like on Bradley Street?
those are the ones we captured that utilities is marked as.
Okay, that's not the implication that those are
Right.
commercial.
I noticed it while we were having our conversation. I was hoping no one else noticed it.
I was afraid they were all spot zone commercial.
That's what I was thinking, and I mentioned that in the, but
Okay,
nope.
all right.
so those are just houses that are vacant. Or
Empty
lots that are
Houses or
vacant.
lots.
Either houses or lots that
That
no
have
longer,
public, that have sewer and
that
water.
have sewer right
It's
there.
my color perception that got me screwed up.
Yeah.
okay.
And what I was hoping, and Dennis and I had talked about this before, I was hoping that there would be a concentration or a trend, but what we have is like a shotgun instead.
Yeah.
A couple here, a couple there.
So like in the R2 zones, the stuff that's yellow, is that Like you have, up by McKinley Street, Roosevelt Ave. you
Those
have-
yellow ones, yep.
Those are
Yep.
ones that
Oh, I
aren't
see what
being
you've done.
used.
Okay, all right.
Okay, yep,
That's part of the same study.
okay.
Now I understand what I'm saying. That's better.
It probably would be good, Ken, if you would provide the same map to
I
the
will.
planning board
Yep.
that we've been looking at with the CEGC, so that you can get an idea for where the lots are.
Mm.
Where you can-
Okay.
I mean, it makes sense to do something with those lots, that way we got utilities, let's use them.
Yep, that, and we've got some blight that we need to take care of, and that actually will go back into developing those lots.
Mm.
Making those neighborhoods a nicer place to live. So I didn't know we were gonna have a big conversation about tiny houses and manufactured houses, but just so that, it's on everyone's radar, and if you want me to write it, the state statute is easy to find. It's probably in that, over here somewhere, but I was gonna tackle that tonight.
Just write it and throw it in, be done with it, let's just get this done, get 13 done, like
Okay.
young Phil said, just get this done.
So that leaves us with the definitions we've been working on for weeks now.
That's what I was gonna say.
Younger.
Phil 3.
I was talking about Phil, so you. Oh, you thought I meant Phil McDonough. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out who's young and who's not.
I'm not. I'm just Robert. It's my rules.
Can I have some of that hair color for next meeting?
Sure. Sure, you want me to say what I got cut off this weekend?
I'm glad I'm not coming to that meeting.
And so what I've done is given us a master list of those
Yes.
definitions we've already worked on.
Yep.
And I also provided some, because we had a conversation at the last meeting, to kind of go out to some other communities and see what they're doing with some of these definitions. I found that it's not standard by any stretch. Every community's kind of come up with their own. I used a couple communities that are roughly our size. So some of them had definitions for assisted housing, some did not. Some had congregate housing, some did not. I think our nursing home definition is as good as the comparable ones.
Phil wants to fix it.
Well, I just made a bunch of changes to the one from Presque Isle. I don't know what. I had-
Well, we'll look at ours, see if you like ours. I don't care about theirs.
On the last page of the package.
In the case of defining congregate care and nursing homes and those other things, we may just want to go directly to the state laws as far as what they define those as, rather than worrying about what the state's
we
land
did,
use
yeah.
definitions are. That way we're regulating it the same way the state does, and everybody's on the same page. Those things.
I like that.
Yeah. Anytime we can
Yeah.
defer to the people who are gonna overrule us anyway, we might as well.
The ordinance will definitely do that.
Okay.
These are just definitions that are in the end of
Right.
chapter 13.
Just, I think in every case, they should, if there's an overriding definition at the state or federal level, we should try to be in
Well,
Can't
within
think of the
reason
word,
though,
but
because we want to
like that.
adopt those, I mean, it ties back into what we were saying and Dennis was alluding to, that we can adopt those statutes by state and federal level, but we can also be more stringent if need be within, reason.
Yeah, but I don't know if that kind of more stringent filters all the way down to land use definitions, or does it?
Again, definitions, it's how you define it.
Yeah, I know.
In the case of these particular industries, where the state already regulates them, licenses them, and does inspections on them, and other things, it is a lot easier just to say, okay, we're gonna define them the same way that the state does, since they're an oversight agency.
Because the last thing we want is for the state to come in and say, well, you failed this inspection because what the city wants you to do. So, right.
But we don't want to have every possible opportunity where if the state says, well, this is a bare minimum what you need, we don't want to necessarily adopt that across, and have that be
Yeah.
you know, our mindset that, well, you know, if the state has a regulation for it, well, then it's gotta work.
I've yet,
Because it may or may not work for what we envision to be happening in Caribou. I mean, it ties into the things with the housing, is that you can have this, but you also need to be able to have this here.
But would that show up in the bylaw or in the land use definitions? That's my point.
well, let me comment that I've been working with the state for 45 years and I've yet to find anything that is minimal from their perspective.
Right.
So I cannot think of anything that we would want to add.
So with regards to these, if I might, Kim,
Yep.
usually with these kinds of facilities, the state has a lot of oversight, right? You know, Department of Health and Services, or Human Services, they're gonna make sure people are being taken care of. They're operationally, that's where a lot of their regulations are going to be. They might have a definition of a hospice level 1, level 2, level 3. You know, we could certainly say a hospice is the same as hospice 1, 2, and 3 according to state definitions. We could broaden ours to encompass those. But the other things that we might be looking at is more the, you know, not necessarily how does it operate, but how does it look and feel in the community. That's where the city can step in and say, okay, you know, I don't think we want to get into, we can only have so many number of beds.
Right.
With so many type of patients. That's, leave that in the state's hands.
And I look at these definitions, this is just clarifying language, so we'll go state statute. Our ordinance reads like this, and it mentions hospice, well, what's a hospice? And you can go through, oh, a hospice is like this. And I think I fixed everything that needs state licensure to refer to the fact that it needs state licensure, so that refers you back to the ordinance. So I think in some ways we've got bogged down on definitions. Maybe we're overthinking it a little bit. Maybe our work is better applied to the actual ordinance.
But definitions also need to be able, with regards to enforcement as well. Because if you don't have something in a definition, and well, it doesn't say that, I can do that right here.
Right.
Listen, aren't you the one who's also in a hurry?
But I want it done right. So, I mean,
So
Well,
I,
as I said to someone on Facebook today, I won't mention the subject, but I said, do you want a win or do you want perfection? Because you're not going to get both.
so I've noted that I'll go back and check the definitions against the land use definitions
Okay.
of the state.
Is it feasible for us
Other than that,
to,
we've revised these 2 or 3 times, so.
is it feasible now for us to aim for a hearing on the Chapter 13 revisions in November?
Well,
Does your schedule allow for you to wrap up the 13 draft?
If you say it, I'll make it so.
Well, you don't work for me, you work for him.
Well, I'm serving this board.
this is your chance to be Jean-Luc.
I ain't gonna be no Jean-Luc.
Jean-Luc Picard. Make it so.
Oh, that reminds me of another thing.
We're really, I mean, we've done a lot of work on the land use tables, we've done a lot of work on definitions, there's a couple other details I think that we could cover over the next meeting or 2. It's feasible that we come up with a recommendation to take to council and a letter to the council in November.
Let's make that a target.
November
Do
8th.
we have to publish it a certain number of days ahead of the hearing?
Yes.
That's what I thought. I mean, so this document has to be available for somebody to come in and look at before we have the hearing.
Why don't we bring it to
15
the,
days.
why don't we bring it to this body for the November meeting for consideration for the public hearing at the December hearing?
That's good with me.
Okay,
And so we will need it, we will need
public hearing
We
November.
will need an updated version of this delivered to us a week before the November meeting so that we can read it and come to this meeting and say, yep, okay, we're good to go.
The notice will have to be up 15 days in advance.
Well, the hearing will only be a month later.
Hearing would be December.
right.
The hearing would be in
We would
December.
wanna,
Oh, the hearing's gonna be December.
yeah, we
The
would
hearing will
rather.
be in December.
Yeah.
We want to take a look at it before the hearing.
Try to set November's agenda to focus on our final review
Of
of the
chapter
Chapter 13
13.
draft.
Push that right through.
Try, anything else that's coming in, try to put it aside, unless it's very important.
Wow.
So Denise was just asking me, does this process have to be longer because it's so comprehensive? It doesn't have to be. You could simply, the rezoning element and the code changes. One of the questions would be, all the properties that are having a zone change affect them. You may have to mail all of those out, and maybe it's a mass mail to the whole community.
You'd be better off doing that.
Post it on Facebook, because
Well,
Right.
I mean, bring in the Aroostook Republican newspaper and give them an outline of the changes so people can read it and
If it takes a
decide
page, it takes a page.
if they want to come in and get a copy of the document for greater detail. But there could be just simple bullets of, you know,
The ordinance is very, very specific, that if a zone change is occurring on someone's property, we have to send them a letter, basically.
So we send them a letter, we make it available on the city's website for download, a PDF download. We put it on Facebook, we put it in the Republican stating that this is the outline of what's going to be changed. If you'd like a copy, or if you'd like to, this is where you can find it, and just get it
A
out
lot of
there.
these folks that are gonna get this, I hate to say this, but a lot of folks who are gonna get this letter do not have a computer.
well, the thing that I was, no, but they probably, I'm hoping they read the Aroostook
May
Republican.
I tell a story about that briefly, before you go too far?
You're the chairman.
Yes,
Go ahead.
just last week, someone approached me and said, "What's this about a new religious school over on the Lombard Road? We read about it in the Fort Fairfield Journal." I said, "Well," at first I said, "Well, we must have had a hearing on that." Turns out, I don't think we did have a hearing, it was just informational, and I corrected myself. But I said, "And that would have been in the Republican," and this person said, "Well, nobody reads that." So,
I think he was speaking for himself.
Well,
it was a she.
I will tell you that that particular publication doesn't do itself any justice when it advertises on its webpage that there's 450 articles here or 35 in print.
Oh, I know, that's another whole issue, but, no pun intended. But we cannot assume that the public is gonna be made aware just because we put it in the Republican.
You're meeting with the airport committee next month, so just make a banner and fly it around Caribou. I mean, I don't know how else to get out to these people.
We have to write, we're gonna have to write letters.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
gotta
with
go out.
letters, yes.
It's gonna go out to everybody who's gonna get affected. And
Yeah,
just skimming over what we've moved as far as lines and stuff like that, it's probably gonna affect a good portion of people.
well, and.
You know, if not everybody, except for those in the more or less larger R3 areas.
Maybe you should call a press conference and invite the Republican, the Fort Fairfield, and the Bangor Daily.
Don't forget Fiddlehead Focus
and-
and,
Well, they're all tied together, aren't they? Anyway,
We'll just do a
but
press release.
yeah.
Yeah, just do press release.
But I think
do a press release and send it to everybody that, you know,
We still have to do the letters.
we'll take
because,
care of
I
that.
know, but there's a lot of people that are gonna get the letter and they're gonna say, what is this all about?
So then
And
come
so
to
they
the
need a
hearing.
simple layman explanation in the newspaper.
We'll have to have the hearing at the Performing Arts Center.
Are you gonna
Well,
bring the chairs to
you
the
know, you may
Performing
have a
Arts
point
Center,
there.
or are we gonna have to use the ones that are up there? I like these chairs, they're comfortable.
I'm bringing my lazy boy that's up there. Just saying.
Yeah, we gotta think, but somebody, he's got a valid point. If this sparks a lot of interest, this won't be the place we have the
Well, the
hearing.
rec department,
Oh, we're not enough people. You're not gonna put people on bleachers and those kinds of chairs. Don't see it happening.
I think CPAC would.
Even, I don't think you would fill the rec center if we did it in the same room that we did the economics and everything. I think we could just fill out the chairs and
We had what, 30 chairs, 30 or 40 chairs set up?
fill them.
You use the multi-purpose room at the rec? Is that the room you use? Yeah.
I'll let you guys worry about that.
And we'll use metal chairs, we don't want to get too comfy.
I'll be by to pick up your lazy chair. I think both of them will fit in my bed and my pickup. We'll be all set.
Okay, so that's our marching orders then.
Yes, I appreciate it. I know it's work, but we gotta get it done. And I believe, what, 2 meetings ago, I said the same thing. We
Well,
need to get
and
this
if-
done.
and if you, I hate to say this, but if you get stumped and you need to pull us together for
Pull us together.
workshop, do it.
Okay,
I mean, yeah.
Anyone else have any issues?
I just move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? We are adjourned.
Good, thanks, guys.
Turn off the microphone.